We're getting started with the NSF GRFP, which is a mouthful. Welcome to the world of national fellowships, which is all about really a bizarre acronyms. So I'm going to start with one giant caveat. I was telling Kylie, so the funding for NSF is, who knows what that is? The solicitation for NSF for next year doesn't come out until July normally, and this year is scheduled, instead of coming at the beginning of July, is probably going to come at the end of July. So all of the things I'm about to talk about in this presentation are based upon what we know from the past few years about the NSF and this particular application. So hopefully things will look about the same for this next cycle, but be prepared that there might be some changes. And if there are, we're here to support you in that process too. We'll be learning alongside you. So with that, let us go on. So we're going to do a quick overview of the NSF GRFP. Advice from, I don't think I have faculty on this. I think I just have current fellows, what support we offer in our office. And then I have a brainstorming document I will share with everyone and send along afterwards so that you can do some of that on your own time. But we have some thoughts about how you can generate ideas for things that go in the application itself. The main takeaway is if you are interested in a research-based STEM graduate degree and you are eligible to apply, you should apply. There is no downside to applying to this program. I think particularly if you are a current or a rising senior who will be looking at going to grad school after graduation, this is a great process to go through to prepare yourself and prepare your materials for what your grad school applications will look like. So hopefully you will get funded, but even if you don't get funded, you would have this body of work that you can utilize to be a stronger applicant for your grad programs. So moving on. What do you get if you receive the NSF GRFP? Over 5 years, you get $159,000. So not too shabby. It's 3 years of support over a 5-year period. So you get to choose if you've got 5 years of your degree, you get to select which 3 years you're using that award. That can be done in conjunction with maybe some TAs and other research and funding that you have. But just so you know, it's an annual stipend of $37,000 and a $16,000 educational allowance that goes directly to the school in lieu of tuition and fees. So if that doesn't quite match what tuition and fees are, they expect the school to just accept the $16,000 and you're good. Hopefully that's been true for you, Kylie. I hope. Yes. They also, because this is an award that is given to you as an individual, it is not given to your research project, but you as a researcher and student. So it is flexible, right? You are saying, this is the project I want to do, this is the school I want to go to, this is the degree I want to get, this is who I want to work with, but you take it with you, right? It's portable. You can use it anywhere in the US. So you can use it here at USC, but you can also use it at other schools. You can use it in some ways as a bargaining chip for acceptance into grad school. If you receive this, this is a nice thing to go to a school and say, hey, I'm coming with some funding. Do you maybe have space for me? And it's unrestricted in the sense that, like, you receive this, you use it, and that's great. There's no additional service requirement. You don't have to pay it back. You can just have it for those 3 years. The overview of the eligibility. So this is federally funded, so they are funding US citizens, nationals, and permanent residents. You'll note I have the little asterisks on this. For full eligibility, of which there are a lot of details about eligibility, you can look at the solicitation. The current solicitation is still available online. You can look and see what this past cycle has been. You can search for NSF 24-591. It does still come up. And then, as I mentioned, the next version is slated to come up in late July. But this is the ruling document of NSF, right? So we don't really know the details until this is promulgated. They are looking to fund and support early career researchers. So I say undergrad and grad students, this is for graduate work, but they're looking for graduating seniors who are about to begin grad school or students who are in their first, maybe starting their second year of their graduate program. So it's early career, not later. They are looking for at STEM fields to fund. There are a few social sciences that fall within that. So there's some poli-sci, some psychology things. We can talk about that. And then they also can fund if you're doing a STEM education degree. You have to be enrolled full-time in a graduate degree program at an accredited nonprofit U.S. institution of higher education. So full-time enrollment is the key there to look at. and they do not allow you to utilize the funds at a foreign institution. So you have to be in the US to use these funds. So you know, you can't use it for grad school in the UK or something like that. This is a US program. Ineligible degree programs, I always like to mention these. So they are not about funding professional degree programs. So no business programs, no med school, no law school, no vet school, no dental school. They also don't fund joint degrees, so no MD, PhD, or JD, PhD. They are not interested in funding any kind of public health, so no MPHs. They don't do counseling or social work, no MSWs. The only education they'll fund is STEM education degrees, and I love that they throw in history. History is ineligible, except history of science. Like you could do a history of science degree. Okay, that's great. Those are really fun degrees, so if you're interested, do that. But I love that they put history specifically as ineligible because of the exception. So, but here's the list of eligible fields of study, which is pretty great. All of the usual suspects: chemistry, computer information science, engineering, geosciences, life sciences covers a whole lot, materials research, math, physics and astronomy, psychology, just general social sciences. There's some like anthropology and things in there that are interesting, and STEM education, like I said. So these are the broad fields. They have a lot of subfields within each of these as well. And that solicitation will really go into more detail as to which places or which kinds of degrees. Also, you can look up the past recipients of NSF on the website, in the fastlane.gov website. If you search for NSF recipients, you can actually see the specific fields and subfields that they funded in previous years. So it's like by person. So sometimes that's nice if you're like, does anyone actually ever get the NSF for cultural anthropology? Well, yes, they do. You can go find that. How many people do they give psychology ones to? So especially sometimes when you're in those not as obvious fields, like in the social sciences, it can be reassuring to go through and see, oh, they do award some of these. Um, Ineligible fields of study. So NSF wants to fund research science. They think that anything that has health-related goals or medical goals really should be funded by someone like the NIH. So they are not interested in having research done with those directly health-related goals. What this means is if the research that you're doing has implications in this area, that can be okay. You can talk about that in the broader impacts and intellectual merit, but it needs to be really clear that what interests you is the scientific research component and the questions about that particular field and pushing the boundaries, not necessarily in terms of healing people. Which seems like a weird way to say that, but it's just the difference in terms of who wants to fund what. So this is why they don't fund medical degrees or joint degrees or MPHs. They also don't want to fund anything clinical. Okay, so be aware of that. And again, sometimes questions come up with students who maybe have clinical experience or want to involve some of that. And so we're happy to help you navigate what the balance is and how you present your work within NSF, if it seems like something that you really should be eligible for, but just know upfront this is what's going on. Toxicology, I see the question. That's a really interesting question, Eddie. I don't know about toxicology. We could look into that. I feel like that could go either way. Um, yeah, I think that there's space for toxicology, but I don't want to talk out of turn. So I will look that up and we will figure it out. Probably not right this second, but we will figure that out. Thank you for asking. Uh, Eligibility by academic level. Don't be scared by this slide. This is one of the more intimidating slides because figuring out where you fall in the timeline of eligibility can be complicated. So basically, if you are a current undergraduate, junior, or senior who has not started grad school, or if you've earned your bachelor's degree and have not yet started grad school, you are eligible to apply, and you can apply until you actually enroll in a grad degree program, right? So that's like the wide open, no-brainer, you're good. Level one. Level two is if you are in your first year as a grad student in your first graduate degree program. So you've never earned a graduate degree and you are in your first year, the fall, and when I say in your first year, I'm talking the fall that this application is due. So I didn't say that at the beginning. I'm so sorry. NSF GRFP is usually due in October, mid-October. So we're talking about the cycle with an October of 2025 deadline. So at that time, you would be a first year grad student in your first grad degree program, or you could be currently enrolled in a joint bachelor master's student and you finished your 3 years, that's probably your undergrad, and you're starting in that fourth year at the grad work. So you're in that level 2 eligibility, so you can apply there. Level 3, you could be a second year grad student. So if you've done no more than 1 full year of graduate work ever, and you're in a grad program, you could be eligible here. Or if you are a first year PhD student who had earned a joint BA MS degree and you're still in your first year of your PhD work, you fall into level 3. Okay, so that's an eligibility part. And then level 4 is if you have already earned a grad degree, but there's been more than 2 years since you've earned that graduate degree, and you are not currently enrolled in a grad program. Sorry, that was the piece I was waiting for to come to my mind. Yes. Then you are eligible. So that's sort of like, it's almost like starting over because you've had a gap in education and you want to come back. So you could do that. Now, please note that very bottom at levels 2, 3, and 4, you can only apply once. Okay. So overall, you could apply ultimately probably twice, usually, to the NSF. So you could apply as a incoming graduate student, right? So your senior year, or if you take a gap year, you can apply then. And if you don't get it, you would still be eligible to apply then either your first or second year as a grad student then. But if you fall into level 2, 3, or 4 as of this fall, you can only apply once. And so the question to ask yourself is mostly if you are starting graduate school, do you want to apply in your first year or your second year of grad school? Because you can only do it one of those years. And so you probably want to think about and talk with your PI as to when it makes the most sense to apply in terms of maybe having a good grasp of what the research is in that particular group, but also just the funding needs that you have that your program might have. When is it going to be the strongest application for you? It might be the first year, it might be the second year, but you can only apply once, and so just be aware of that. Questions about eligibility, because this one can be kind of wild. And also, this is part of what our office does in terms of advising, is if you've got a confusing or complicated situation, we're happy to sit down and chat through your particulars and see what makes sense and ask NSF themselves, but everybody clear? Okay, onwards. The sort of layout of the timeline. Now, this timeline doesn't really start now. I should have updated it. Be like, spring, start thinking about NSF. Summer, start writing your NSF. But ultimately, the applications tend to be due mid to late October. There's about 3 days of deadlines. They divide it out depending on what the fields are, just so that their whole system doesn't blow up at once. They kind of spread you out. Shortly after the application is due, the reference letters are due. Really, you want them in kind of at the same time. So you have to have 2 recommendations. You really want 3, and you can put 5 in the system, of which they will read 3. So that's how that works. Well, we can talk about that. So you apply to NSF and then you apply to grad schools. So that's what I meant when you have materials now that you can utilize. You've already written a personal statement, you've thought about your research, so you can use those for your applications to grad school. Then you usually hear in March or April the results. So it's been the last week of March, first week of April, typically, that we hear from NSF. This year we've not heard yet, but the website says that, as usual, we should be hearing in the first half of April. So I'm anticipating an April 14th or 15th reveal of winners this year, but it'll be there. And then you have a couple weeks to accept or decline, and then your fellowship year begins. Now, I would say if you're applying as a senior, or as someone who is not currently in grad school and you decline the award, so long as you decline the award by their timeline, you would still be eligible to reapply in the future. But if you don't tell them you decline it and then like don't sign anything, then you're on the blacklist. And so you can just so just be mindful, because plans change, or maybe you didn't get the grad program that you wanted, and so you want to wait and try again. Like that's fine. There's no ding if you decline it, but just make sure you follow all the paperwork. So that's the rough timeline of how things go. what does the application look like? Fun times. As of right now, this is what the application looks like. It's basically two major essays and a bunch of different personal information pieces, some transcripts, and your letters of reference. Okay. So in the personal information, it's like your education background, what kinds of work and research experiences you have. Picking the proposed field of study is actually important because that's who will be reviewing your application. So you want to be mindful and wise in selecting who, how your research fits so that the right people are reading it. Because when you're writing your research essay, you are pitching it to that audience, right? You're not pitching it to me. I should really not be able to understand most of your research essay. You are writing it for people in your field broadly, right? So they may not know your specific topic, but they are that kind of audience. Most of the time, this is pretty obvious. It's not really that difficult for you to choose, but if you are in a sort of interdisciplinary area, you've got a couple different options in terms of one or the other. You can pick a sort of combined option. That may or may not be a wise choice, so we can chat about that. But just know that choosing your field of study does play a part in terms of who is evaluating your application. They also want to know about your awards, your honors, your publications. Again, this is all evidence that you are trying to present them, that you are a valuable investment of someone who both has research experience, but also has a lot of future promise as a researcher, right? That they believe that you are a good investment. So all of the things in the personal information session serve as evidence of that. Your whole application serves as evidence of that, but particularly some of this. The personal relevant background and future goals statement is a 3-page essay. So that's sort of who are you? What are you interested in? What are the kinds of questions you're trying to solve? What experiences do you have both in and out of, lab research that might be relevant? And then where are you headed, right? What kind of grad program are you thinking about and where? Who do you want to work with? What are the questions that you have? How you want to advance the field? So that's a lot in 3 pages, but we're happy to to help with that. And I always say when you're drafting, don't hold yourself to 3 pages when you start drafting, right? Just get it all out, and then we can help you figure out what needs to be in there. Then you have a 2-page graduate research statement. So this one can be interesting because depending on whether you are already in grad school or not, sometimes you have to figure out what do you want to write about. So if you are a current grad student doing grad research, you should write about that. You should write about what your next steps are, and that should be pretty straightforward. If you are a graduating senior, typically we advise that you write this research statement. It's really a proposal in some ways to pitch it to your top grad program, right? If you could go wherever you want to go and work with whoever you want to work with, what is that going to look like? And that's what you want to write. They are trying to see again that you have the experience and the knowledge of your field to make an impact on it, and that you've selected a good place to do it. But ultimately, they are not funding the research, they are funding you. So if you write to your top choice and then don't end up going to your top choice, that's okay. NSF is not going to take this away from you because you're not doing that research. That's not how this works at all. So we're happy to strategize with you about what does it make sense to talk about in here if you are going to be starting a new program. You have to have transcripts, so from your undergrad institution and your grad institution as relevant. You want details about the titles of your courses. If you've got transfer credits, you need a transcript that will show the title as well as the grades, and not just the fact that you have the credits. Um, yeah, and there's not like a GPA requirement really, I think, for NSF. There might be like a 3.0, I don't remember. But mostly they're looking at your transcript to kind of see, do you have coursework that's relevant? Have you done well in the relevant coursework? Again, it's evidence for your promise of success in graduate school. And then here you have the letters of reference, 2 mandatory, 3 recommended. The way this system works is you can put up to 5 people in and you rank them. So like these are my top 3 and then these are my backup 4 and 5. And at the end of the day, when the application fully closes, if you have letters 1, 2, and 4 in, they'll take those 3, right? So that's fine. And we're happy to chat. 3 is really, you want 3. Even though two is the minimum, you don't want to submit just the minimum because these are the people who are able to put you in context of other people who do research and earn grad degrees. And so you want as many voices as possible saying, yes, we know this person, we believe in them, they have the skill set, they have the interests. So please utilize all of that space. Yes, if you're graduating in May, it is fine to ask your undergrad professors. I see that question in the chat. I'm assuming you're graduating from undergrad in May. I guess I should clarify that. But yes, ask people who know you from the past year or two, right? So don't dip back into high school, but undergrad is fine. If you are a current grad student, you want to lean more towards grad professors, but if you had like one undergrad that you had worked with really closely for a long time, that would also be acceptable. If you're a current grad student, you should talk to people who wrote you letters to get you into grad school. Like you've already done this. All right, the evaluation criteria. So once they have all this information, what are they thinking about? What are they trying to figure out? How are they evaluating you? And there are two main pieces. So the first one is what they call intellectual merit. And this is how is the research you are interested in going to advance your field, right? Like how are you expanding the knowledge that we as humans have? So how important is this? How do you talk about it? Again, this is where you can demonstrate how you are situated within a broader field and that you are asking the right questions. So you're not just sort of rehashing things that people have been talking about for years and it's sort of settled science, but you just want to know, no, how are you on the forefront of that? And there's lots of different ways that they evaluate that intellectual merit. So it's your grades, the classes that you've taken, and the awards and publications, but it's also how you put together your research proposal, right? Does it make sense? It's the letters of recommendation. How well do you work with other people? How's your communication? And then this take initiative, solve problems, and persist. I don't know about you, but that seems to me to be pretty important in the research career that you are able to work on that. So it is a holistic review of your whole application. It's not, these are not criteria that are just present for the essays. Um, but interestingly, they do ask in your essays that you have specific sections that address the criteria. So you will need a section of your personal statement and your research essay that says intellectual merit and then goes on to discuss certain things. And that's also something that we're happy to help strategize with you because often it's better to just like write your essays the way you want to, and then we can figure out what fits where in terms of this semi-bizarre structure that they ask you to do. But intellectual merit is the first of the two. And then the second one is broader impacts. And again, I'll be honest with the caveat, I think this is the one that's most likely to be tweaked in the next solicitation, but I don't know how. So from what it has been in the past, this is literally what is the impact of your research, right? So how is it going to make a difference in your life, but more broadly in society? And then it's also the potential impact of you, right, as a researcher, like your presence in the field. And so this list of societal benefits, these are things that in the past NSF has been looking to fund. And so you don't have to, you never have had to have all of them. You usually want to see if you've got one or two that you can talk about from your experiences and kind of focus on that as your area of broader impact. So this is what it's been. Hopefully it will be the same, but this is what we know right now. So a lot of students talk about, you know, the um, the increased participation of underrepresented groups, right? We have a lot of students who do a lot of mentoring, this idea of increasing public scientific literacy, um, working in the community and like sharing information, how you impact the globally competitive workforce, and then increasing collaboration between academia, industry, and others. So any of that has been fair game for broader impacts. And again, this is one that's kind of woven throughout. They're looking at your whole application, but they also want you to have specific sections in your essays that talk about broader impacts. Again, this is the comprehensive review. So they're equally weighted. So it's like 50-50. There's not one or the other. And they are looking at all of the things. So this is like you kind of want these sort of tattooed on your brain. Like these are the two things I need to talk about throughout the entire application. Ah, Kylie. I'm gonna pause and kick it over to you. I might go back so we can see your face because It's much nicer to talk to people. Um, but so Kylie is one of our graduate student fellowship peer mentors. So as a recipient of the NSF, I asked Kylie to join us and just chat a little bit about their experience applying and receiving it. And then also, this is open to questions. So if anyone has questions for someone who's been through the application process, this is also the time. So take it away, Kylie.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I fell into that like first level category where I had graduated in 2020 and then I applied in 2022. So I hadn't started a graduate program yet, but I also was no longer in like an undergraduate program. And I reached out to my current advisor and asked him if he would be willing to work with me to do the GRFP since I wasn't affiliated with a university and didn't have like a national fellowship office and resources to kind of coach me through that. And so that really helped me through my process is he actually had received it himself when he was a graduate student, and he was extremely willing to help me with the process. And so it was more or less that I came up with my whole idea independently, and then he helped me kind of put in those finer details, which was really nice, like coming up with a study system that would work well with the question I was asking. Um, I want to say I started mine about a month before it was due, and I think that probably goes along a timeline that worked well for me and my advisor because I would send him a draft and within 24 hours he would get me comments back. But if you're working with somebody and you need a bit more time between drafts, I would definitely take that into consideration. Um, and I also, I guess for my process, what worked well for me as well was I did a lot of searching online and reading of other successful applications within ecology, because that's the field that I'm in. And so I read through what other people had put in their proposals and then kind of came up with a general framework of what I wanted mine to look like in terms of like I noticed that a lot of applications had a figure in them, even if you didn't have data. So I made up like a predictive figure just in PowerPoint with shapes that I made look like insects and plants. Um, and I think that having a figure in your paper really helps. In terms of if you are going to be running statistical analyses, I also think that that's an important thing to add in your application. It was a conversation I had with my advisor where I was like, I don't currently have this. Should I? And he was like, absolutely. um, and then on the personal statement side, I think what worked well for me, and of course everybody is different, is that I liked to highlight my academic achievements in my personal statement, but I also understand that a lot of that can be seen through transcripts and CVs. So I also try to put in like a personal touch. So in my personal statement, I didn't shy away from talking about the fact that I have other hobbies, like joining a sailing team and doing different things outside of academia, but I found a way to relate it back to like the classroom or a research setting of how like picking up new skills and working with a team could really like help me in my career and advance my you know academic rigor, things like that. But that way they kind of saw that I was a whole person, even outside the classroom, and I think that was beneficial for my application.
Those are some really great points. Thank you. I'm like taking notes myself. Um, Yeah, no, I think that that is a really good way to approach that personal statement because even though they still want a lot of the sort of content of what you've done, you're absolutely right. They're looking at your whole application, so you don't need to repeat yourself. That's a waste of space. You do want to use it, sort of crack yourself open and be like, no, this is who I am because again, they're investing in you as a person, as a researcher who has a life, right? And so being able to talk about all of that is really helpful. I also love the suggestion of the figure in the essay. So I will say they definitely read these holistically. They read them carefully. They read them quickly because reviewers have like a giant stack on their desk that they're working through. And so you want to format your application to not tick off your reviewers, right? You want to make it easy for them to absorb the information that you are trying to give them. So things like figures where it kind of breaks up the page a little bit, it gives them a place to rest their eye. You can use a judicious bolding, right? So like not don't bold everything, but like if there are key pieces you want to pop off the page, that can be useful too. So that's another thing that we try and do is sort of help you think through how do you make it as clear and engaging as possible to someone who wants to be engaged with your work, but is also, reading thoroughly and quickly. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus because they do read them very carefully and you can get notes back. But um, sorry, I'm just gonna like repeat everything that Kylie just said because it was wonderful. But the point you made about the looking at other applications. So this is something that our office also offers to students who are applying is we have passed applications from USC NSF GRFP winners that we are happy to share with students who are actually in the process with us. And so there are things that you can look at to kind of see. And there's really fascinating variation in terms of what's worked, right? Like there's all sorts of ways to present yourself. But I know that for a lot of students, and often for me too, like it's helpful to have an example, right? You want to start by writing your own stuff and getting it out, but then it's okay to look at some others to kind of get ideas about, oh, I forgot to talk about this thing, or like never occurred to me I could organize it this way. So those are resources that we also have. I will now stop talking to make sure that anyone who has questions for Kylie can go ahead and ask them. We have a real live human recipient here. Okay. So Kylie is, like I said, one of our fellowship peer mentors. If you would like to talk to Kylie on her own, we have a coffee card so she can take you out to coffee and have a chat on us. We will pay for it. So please feel free. I'll share that. I'll do a follow-up email after this and I will make sure that that information is there too, because that might sound like more fun than to do it than to ask a question here, right? Go have a conversation and a cup of coffee for free. Like, let's do that. All right, I do have a few more slides, not too many more, so I'm gonna hop back, maybe, maybe. I'm gonna try. There we go. Did that work? No. There we go. That worked. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm back in the tech has gotten a lot better since COVID for me. Like I've had a lot more practice, but I still feel like I'm a little rusty. So here we go. Next steps. So from our office perspective, it's really helpful if you can complete your candidate profile. If you've never talked to us before, this just puts you on our radar. You can check the box that tells us you're interested in NSF, GRFP, and we'll make sure that you get information. Connect with our office really talking with your current advisor or PI, whether that means it's about your current research and applying for GRFP, or if you're a graduating senior or will be a graduating senior and you want to chat with them about grad school and like, how the heck do I do these applications and how do I find funding? They are a key resource in this whole process because they know you, they can recommend you. They know your research. They can help you with that research essay. Again, because I said, our office, we're not your audience for the research essay. If you pitch it to us, I can tell you, like, yes, your English is grammatically correct. And I have some sense of why there might be a broader impact here, but I should not be the person who understands fully everything you're saying. So you need your PI to give you the feedback to say you're at the right level for talking with other people in the field. Review the NSF GRFP. It's nsfgrfp.org. I will be honest with you, there is not a lot of information on that website right now. I think that they are waiting for the solicitation to come through. So just know that that website is there and will be helpful, but currently basically says this year's application cycle is closed. Like that's every page just says that. And then explore graduate programs. So if you are not already in grad school, make sure that you are looking at different schools and different programs and have an idea of what to do. So these are easy things that you can do right now. What we offer in our office, so we do individual meetings and offer feedback. I'm happy to read drafts of applications. We have fellowship peer mentors, current grad students here who are currently receiving the NSF, so they have gone through the application process. Kylie is not alone in that. There are several more. We do have a whole set of NSF faculty committee members. So I think we have like 10 or 15 faculty in all different fields who are on campus and are, if you don't already know them, they are happy to work with you in the particular fields and give you advice. So they are primarily people who they may have had NSF themselves. Or they may be on the national review panels for NSF, so they can give you kind of an insider insight into how they work through an application. So um, they are a huge resource. There's no formal campus process for NSF. This is all in your hands, but this is just a resource that we put together because we know how valuable it is, and we have faculty who really want to help because we all want to have students who receive these awards because we know how valuable it is, and how it can make possible things that might not seem possible. There also will be an online Teams team, Microsoft Teams team, where we have resources so that once you sort of enter the process and like let me know that you're applying this year, we can give you access. That's where you'll find like our, rough out our timeline that we have of suggested steps through along the way. It's also where those previous winning applications would be stored so you can see those. And then we are going to offer some summer programming. We've tried to provide a little more support over the last few years because Kylie, I don't doubt at all that you can totally do this in a month, especially if you have a good faculty support. It also doesn't hurt to start a little earlier. Um, and it can make your fall go a little more smoothly if you've already thought through a lot of this. So everybody gets to figure out their own timing. But we do offer a few things. So what we started last year and we're going to try to continue this year is we're going to do a few workshops over the summer. So they will be, I think the next slide actually has it. No, maybe not. How do I go back? Can I go back? There we go. Um, we'll do 3 different workshops. We'll have one on writing the personal statement. We'll have one on writing your research proposal, and we'll have one on sort of understanding the eligibility and solicitation pieces. That one obviously won't happen until after the end of July. But the other 2, we're hoping to have sessions in June and July. They'll be virtual. There'll be at least a couple different options of times for attending those. So it's just a moment where you can come in, and we'll go over some tips and suggestions, but it also can be an active working time, so you can brainstorm with other people as well. And so it's just a way to kind of keep you on track so that you make a little bit of progress over the summer and then come back to campus in the fall ready to go and ready to finish this. Um, I'm here most of the summer, pretty much all summer. Our office is open all summer. We're happy to do virtual appointments. You don't have to be here in person. So it is really beneficial for us to sit down and sort of map out, what does your summer look like and what do you need the most help with and support in for this application? You can schedule with me through Navigate. So if you didn't catch my name, I'm Jen Bess. Grad students, there's a Calendly link you can use to make appointments with me because I know y'all aren't on Navigate. And then this is new, the sign up for weekly emails with reminders and suggested tasks. This is for all of you like me who is really helped by people telling me what to do week by week. So this is going to be a series where like I think every Monday probably I'll send an email that's like, "Hey, here's a little tip about NSF and like here's one thing you can do this week to make progress on your application." So small, one short email every week to just kind of keep you on track. Nothing else, if you can read them, you can delete them, that's fine. If that's interesting to you, if you think that that would be helpful, you can sign up with that QR code. No pressure. Like I said, it's brand new, but hoping that it will help keep people a little more on track because we all could use a little more keeping on track. More things you can do this summer, talk with faculty. So your advisor, committee member, contact at prospective grad programs. So Kylie, it was great that you were able to talk with your faculty as you were doing this. This is not a bad technique. Like again, if you've got your top choice program and you know who you want to work with, um, it is okay because you should be reaching out to them to express interest in their program. It's not a terrible idea to say, also, I'm applying for the NSF this fall, and I'm hoping to write my research proposal on something in your lab. What do you think about X? Depending on what their time availability is, most people would be willing to give you a little bit of feedback and support in that. Because again, everyone wants you to win this. Because if you come in with the $160,000, that saves them on their budget. Plus, they know that you are of a high caliber of student. So everyone is kind of invested in and happy to help in this prospect. So the thinking about your faculty and talking with them. So the goal is you want to sort of tell them where you are and what you're thinking about and get some feedback and guidance because they've all been where you are. Right? You aren't a faculty member if you haven't gone through this grad school process and had to apply for funding. So Don't be afraid. It's going to be okay. Here are the three. I knew I had a slide. Here are the three interactive virtual summer workshops. Understanding the review criteria. That's what it is. Once the solicitation comes out, we'll do that one. Writing the personal statement and writing the research statement. We'll do those in June and July, maybe a little bit in August, depending on when that solicitation comes out. And then for brainstorming, I'm going to send you a document that just basically asks some questions that are related to the actual essay prompts, but slightly different to just kind of get your brain freed and working and not worrying about writing an essay, but just sort of brainstorming ideas or experiences, stories that you want to tell, questions that you have, how did you get interested in the field that you're in, things like that. So the most compelling NSF applications um, are really specific to the individual, right? So like everyone who applies to NSF can say things like, you know, I love research. Or, this makes me happy, or this is, I love discovering new things, right? Like that's great. You all should be able to say that, but it's not enough to distinguish you from everyone else who's saying it. So the more specifics you can give about the stories that you have, the moments that you have experienced in research, how you come up with the questions, that's what makes you a memorable applicant. And so that's what the goal of some of this brainstorming is what are the pieces of you that you want to put in your application. This, I think, is also one of the biggest benefits of working with our office because sometimes students have a really hard time figuring out what it is about them and their experiences that is different, right? It's just what you've done. It seems normal to you. You don't think it's special. And when we read things like this, we can give you some perspective and say, actually, you know what? Most students haven't done things like this. Or like, wow, I've talked to a lot of people in ecology and I've never come across someone who, does sailing like Kylie. So there are ways that we can be a sounding board and reflect stuff back to you that that you may or may not have considered actually worth putting in the application, but that will make you stand out and memorable and really support the argument that you are making to the readers that you are the best fit for this particular competition. No pressure. Oh, I didn't even know didn't know I had animation in here. Questions. Sorry, that got me a little too excited.
When do you think the application will open?
That is a very good question. Not for a while. They won't open before the solicitation opens because they need to make sure that those match. If you want to get a copy of the questions from last year, I'll make sure that that is in the Teams so that you can see the layout of everything. But it will be a while. So that's why the big push of our summer recommendations are on the essays because then you don't have to worry about what the formatting is in the website and things like that. But we'll look at that. There is a specific application portal. So once that nsfgrfp.org website is updated, it will have a direct link to the application portal where you can create your own account and have full control over all of the things. So you have to upload all of your transcripts, all of your essays, fill out the biographical information. You would register your recommenders. Don't register them before you have talked to them because once you register them, the NSF system will send out an email to them that says, oh, Allison Fletcher has requested a recommendation from you. So you want to make sure that they know that that's coming. But that's the only piece that you don't have to fully input. Like you should not see those letters. They should be put in by the writers. Um, but the application will be in your control once it opens, but it won't be until late summer, early fall. But I will make sure that a version of it from last year is in the Teams team.
Is it advisable that we mention like specific schools and specific PIs by name whenever we're writing? Like if we don't quite know or we're considering several schools, should we pinpoint one out and it doesn't matter whether we get in or not, or should we just kind of talk about a proposed project rather than focusing on where it would be at?
So you want to find kind of the sweet spot of both. You don't want to be talking about a bunch of different places. Like they don't need the full list of where you're applying. It's going to be easier for you to write a more targeted application to, like I said, your top choice. But I think, and I should have checked this, I think in the application they ask kind of where you're applying. I think that's a section Is that right, Kylie? Yeah. So there is room for them to see the range, but your application should probably be focused on one. Now, if you are in contact with that professor and you have chatted with them, like that's perfectly fine to mention, to say like in my conversations with Dr. So and so, this is the scope of the project. That's fine. It's also fine if you haven't, like that's okay. Because again, they are funding you, they're not funding the project. So if you are writing about a project with a professor that you've not talked to, make sure that it seems like a reasonable project for that lab. Like make sure there's a connection, just in case someone reading it might actually know that lab and be like, that's not what they do. But you don't have to have made that direct contact, but it is okay to mention it if you have. Um, yeah. But it's going to be easier for you to write, to focus on one. The personal statement, you're probably not going to talk about. You may not talk about the specific school a whole lot, if at all there. That's more about the degree and the long-term plans you have. It would be more in the research statement. That's where you would be more specific, because you would be part of what you're demonstrating is that you recognize, you know, who is doing the work that you also want to be doing, what schools have the resources that you would need to accomplish that. Like, have you picked a good program based on everything else you're telling us in this application? So is it reasonable? That's what they're looking for in that, is does this proposal hold together? Um, yeah, that's what I would say about that. These are good questions.
Hi, I have a clarifying question kind of on eligibility. So, I will be starting a PhD program at South Carolina this coming fall, and I have never applied to the GRFP. So, does that mean I can either apply this fall or next fall?
Did you earn a master's degree, or are
I
you
did
coming
not.
straight into you're coming straight to PhD from your BA?
Yes.
Yes, so you can do either this fall or next fall.
Okay. And then follow up to that. So let's say I don't apply this fall and I apply next fall, which I could see there being some advantages to that, like to be already established within a lab.
Yeah.
But let's say I graduate in fewer than 5 years. Um, like what happens to the extra funding, I guess.
So you have 3 years of funding,
Right.
and if you don't use it all, you don't use it all.
Okay.
It's a use it or lose it. So if you finish, but I mean, even if you apply next year, God bless you, will you do your PhD in 4 years? Right? So like 5 years. I mean, yeah, I could see that. But yeah, they're not going to write you a check for the year that you didn't use.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one other question. So seeing as how I'm an incoming student,
Yeah.
I tried to make a candidate profile, but I was unable to.
Yeah, because you don't have an account yet on campus. So
Okay. Do you know like is it after I like enroll in classes will I be able to?
do you have
Uh
a USC email?
I do, yes.
Hmm. I would maybe try once the semester ends, because I don't know when they put in the incoming students in terms of having like an ID and an account. Um, if you Yeah, you can use that Calendly link to make an appointment with me, because that does not require a USC ID. So that's the easiest way to like get into the loop. And the candidate profile we can work out I mean, if you email, make an appointment, like, okay, we know you're applying for NSF, like that'll be fine. And then once you're on campus, we can get you an actual profile that would work.
Okay. I don't want to miss all the summer stuff, like the
Yeah,
preparatory.
yeah.
I
So I mean,
just
everyone who's here, I mean, you all had to register, so you'll be getting a follow-up email from me, and I will be adding you all to the Teams team. Why is it so hard to say those things? Teams team. Um, so yeah, we'll make sure. And then if you do that QR code to get on the summer emails, that doesn't require a login either. Like that's just a form stack form. So
Oh, okay.
We'll
I thought
catch
that was
we'll catch you all so the candidate profile is the only one that you have to log in for. These other ones, like the Calendly and the weekly email sign up, are just forms.
okay. Is the weekly email sign up like is that on y'all's website or
No, it's brand new. I just had our assistant make it today.
okay. And okay, so I didn't catch
But
that
I
in
will
the
send the recording. I will
Yeah.
send the recording of this, so that's how you, yes. That's the question is like, oh, I didn't get that QR code.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. And we're happy to work with you as an incoming student. Like that's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
good questions. Anybody else? All right, has
Um,
everyone's, oh yes, go ahead, Addie. Yes.
okay, I'm just so sorry. So I know I mentioned toxicology,
Yes.
but my program is not toxicology. I'm
Okay.
hoping to do like a project that, okay, so I'm coming in as a PhD student in the chemistry department.
Okay.
And so I'm hoping to do like a sub project that kind of leads to toxicology, but it's
Okay.
not. It's I'm thinking about doing something like aerosol toxicology about how aerosols are affecting I guess like human health in the sense.
Gotcha. So it would be, yeah. So you would just want to be careful in terms of pitching the research versus the impact, right? So your interest in exploring the toxicology in the world of chemistry and how that affects things, the reason that that might be interesting to you or like what you hope that that ultimately helps with could be some health things. We want to carefully figure out how to craft that, but like that can be part of what it's for. But that the research that you're doing is really in the sort of mechanisms of how does this all work together at a toxicological level. I made that word up.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. But coming in chemistry, I feel like that's a safe place to start in terms of field, and we can figure out how this might fit together. Awesome. All right. Well, so we did record this, so I will send the recording out. I'll send out a follow-up email tomorrow morning that'll have some links and things so that y'all can get started, make appointments, sign up for weekly emails, all of the fun stuff. But thank you again, Kylie, for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank all the rest of you for braving the crazy weather we're having. I was glad that we had power. It's good times. Hope everyone is staying dry. I think the rain has stopped. My dog is still cowering under the bed, so we're good. Um, and I will hopefully talk to all of you at some point in the next 4 or 5 months about NSF. So I look forward to that.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
you as well.